when I go and I do these crew trainings, they learn one-on-one how important their job is and they learn how to do it. So now they're empowered and they don't require anything more than that, than just knowing that themselves and the crew know how to do this the right way. And so they go in and they apply those practices day in, day out. They've told me we get excited about coming to work again because we know we see the plants growing, we see what they do, we see the benefits, we see the butterflies and the hummingbirds. They love them too.
Welcome back to the Beet podcast. I am your host today, Jacques, and today we have on Wendy Proud. She has been a horticulturalist for 30 years and has wonderful experience in desert plants, arid plants, all things in between. And I'm actually going to allow you to introduce yourself because you have a lot of experience and background, and I don't want to even muddy any of that. So thank you for coming on and for talking today with us and helping us learn about these arid plants and plant care.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be able to share and kind of bring my story to the group. So,
Yeah.
it started at a very early age for me. I was the kind of child that always wanted to be outside. I really never wanted to be inside. When it rained, I cried. I said, no, I have to be outside. And I was the kind of child that loved to get dirty, play with bugs and collect leaves and flowers and make mud pies and, decorate them with flowers, all this sort of stuff. So very early on, I was just completely captivated by nature. And I realized that I needed to choose a career as time went on to kind of build those skills and allow me to be that person that wanted to be outside all the time. So I naturally gravitated towards something in the environmental field, and I found horticulture, which is something kind of interestingly enough is kind of rarely educated on anymore. It's been changed into environmental sciences and different things like this, which is important, but getting away from the true essence of the plants, I think, is really going to cost us in the long run. So I'm really encouraging people to continue with their horticulture. But nonetheless, I continued that. I received my degree in horticulture, went on to have a long career in the nursery business, primarily working for different companies, doing various things, growing for Monrovia Nursery for a number of years, doing plant research, which was really fun, and bringing new plants into the country through patented and trademarking and stuff like that. So that was really fun. And having a sales job with a color grower was my first job. I remember I was 18, 19 years old and doing all kinds of selling plants while I was in college and everything. So it was just a really great experience overall with going through the nursery business.
Yeah, the nursery business, how long were you kind of involved in that, like the actual growing and propagation of plants?
Well, I still am actually, because now,
Yeah.
now I own my own corporation. I have for about 15 years now. It's my second one, actually. The first one was in plant maintenance, coincidentally enough, how they all come back around. But I'm now doing kind of wearing a lot of different hats as I transition more into the job that I really see myself doing for the rest of my life. And I really feel is kind of my given mission, really, that I just had to take time to realize. But it's the kind of thing now where I'm still involved in the nursery business. I love that aspect of it. I am a true horticulturist at heart. I do love the plants. They do really enlighten my mood and just make me feel great every day. And so I don't want to get away from that part of it. And I don't see myself ever continuing my learning because there's so many plants and so many amazing plants, right? Can you like just one? Not really.
No, that's always been a challenge,
Yeah.
and every year, even the ones that you thought you knew and that you love so much can surprise you.
Oh, 100%. You learn new things about it. I'm like, wow, I didn't know I could do that to that plant, or it would do that. I mean, yeah, it's really fun for sure. Nature is always surprising us. I think I learned a lot of that too when I had my first maintenance business, which was, we called it Proud Murphy, and it was based on my last name and my colleague's last name, the partner I was with at the time, Michael Murphy, who was my a partner in doing horticulture for people, maintenance for them at large estates and things like that. And we developed these relationships with people. And I think that was something that really stuck with me, that I hadn't realized how important that truly was. And that period of time doing my own landscape maintenance, which, and again, this wasn't your typical landscape maintenance. This wasn't with, there was nothing electric or gas operated. Everything was done by hand. And so it was going back to the old school belief of the truly nurturing and caring and taking the time to understand the cycles and the uniqueness of each plant. And so we would go in and we'd evaluate people's gardens based on the horticulture that was required to maintain them, not on simply trying to make all of them fit in the same size box or whatever. We truly embrace the beauty of each one of them and the subtleties that they needed in order to thrive. We had clients that would gush about us. They would give us the keys to their house, to their mansions and their estates, and say, the doctors, lawyers, they said, we were going to be gone all day. The house is yours. You need lunch, go in, make yourself lunch. Or like, I mean, we never did, but it was just this,
Yeah, it's like a high level of respect.
yeah, this understanding, this responsibility that we felt, and just how good that felt, that we were so respected, like you said, and just they believed in us and what we were doing because they saw it in their gardens. People would call and say, I never saw this bloom, sending us pictures. I never saw this bloom for 5 years with my other gardener. And I'm not beating up the gardeners, they just didn't know. But at the same time, it really taught me a lot about what was happening out there, generally speaking, in the landscape today.
Yeah. And then was your kind of install and care business, was that focused on like a specific group of plants, or was it kind of just general, like any sort of landscape design or anything like that?
So it's an interesting question because I hadn't really thought of it that way, but I realize now that, sure, all of that I've learned in my 40 plus years of horticulture has taught me that this has been a collective journey for me to the point where I am now, and what it's going to do for me in terms of just the overall skill set that I've developed kind of unknowingly, so to speak. And it's just been collecting in this honeypot, if you will, of info that I can pull from at any point, and it's pretty magical, to be honest. So I focused on whatever plants they had, and if I didn't know them, I learned them. I made sure I took the time to research them and understand them. And I've learned that plants, there's certain, each plant has its own, way of growing, seasonality, all these sorts of things, but they can all be kind of grouped, so to speak. And you can understand them much quicker if you understand what group they fit into and what that group typically likes. Now, there's always anomalies to every group, but at the same time, that's the fun in it, I think, is learning what those little anomalies are and making them tip. Just like people, there can be something that is really, really important to that person. And until you find what that is, you may not have cracked the code. So it's just fun to try and learn those things about the plants and then see them thrive. Because then you say, hey, I get your vibe. I've got you now. I'm here to help you. And it's like this mutual respect thing where it's just, they reward you and you just have so much delight from it. I don't know. I'm a little woo-woo on the plants, maybe.
That's cool too, that like you would take the time to learn these plants, because also, I mean, not just for the benefit of the person's garden or their home, but to yourself, like you got to learn in that process. And to me, like that's one of the greatest things in life is to always learn something, and having these new plants to figure out how they tick and how to make them really perform must have been fun to actually see those results take action and like see what happened. Like even as simple, I'm trying to think of like a everyday garden analogy that people can understand, like something like a blueberry, it needs acidic soil or else it won't really fruit or thrive. But if you don't know that and you keep treating it like all your other plants, you're never going to get a blueberry. But I'm sure like with these there's so many different landscape plants and like beautiful ornamentals and everything in between, that I could see that being like a very wide range of like little tips and needs and tricks that you kind of learn and develop throughout the years?
And a lot of these are noted in books or online in different ways, but it's learning them and taking the time to add them to your library to pull from when you need them. And what's funny is that I've had the opportunity through my career to learn a lot of different plants, conifers, herbaceous plants, things that you wouldn't typically find in Southern California because I worked for Monrovia Nursery and I was able to travel to the Pacific Northwest a lot. And so I developed an affinity for dahlias. We can't grow dahlias down here like they can grow dahlias up there. The dahlias up there blow your mind, things like that, how important climate is and how Mother Nature is wise. You can't fool her many times. So stop trying.
Yeah, there's like the diminishing return for sure. Like you can get like some dahlia, like maybe a couple blooms, but the plant's not going to be like big, full, covered in leaves, happy and healthy. And then you're like, why did I waste my time? Because now I have this sickly looking plant with like two blooms and it doesn't really want to be here. So yeah, like there's a limit to what you could push.
For sure. And there's a lot of breeding that's being done out there, of course, and that was the other fun part of my career is that I've been able to dive a little bit deeper into so many different categories of things within horticulture through my career and the different jobs that I've had, that learning about the plants in terms of the things that the breeders are trying to overcome, seedless, produces more fruit, can handle more heat, doesn't require as many chill hours, low chill blueberries, for example. All of these sorts of things we're working to overcome and to try and make it so you can have everything everywhere.
Yeah, it's pretty
But
amazing.
yeah, it's a little mind blowing when you go into a nursery today because a nursery that has a good supply of stuff, and I guarantee you're going to find more things that you don't know than you do know. Even as someone like me who knows a lot of plants, I go in there. I mean, I'll stumble into various stores, and just because I'm a plant nerd, I want to check out and see what they have, not necessarily buy anything, but I look and I see what they have to learn. And it's astounding what's out there if you just look and how many different suppliers there are trying different things. So it's a little hard to keep up sometimes.
Absolutely. And myself, I get overwhelmed all the time when I go to a local nursery, just looking at all the different flowers and the different like perennials and even some of the natives where I'm like, I don't know if I've ever seen that before, but I guess there's a lot of native cultivars now or nativars where you get like all these different color blends and things like that. But the world of sort of perennial shrubs, ornamentals, those kinds of things to me is like very overwhelming. Like I have my vegetable world pretty well understood at this point, but there's so much nuance and like when it comes to especially landscape, thinking for me the hardest part is thinking about the long term because these plants like you're often planting 1 gallon, 5 gallon, and they grow into really big plants.
You have to be careful. You have to do a little research, and that's kind of become a little bit of my struggle in the world today of which I'm moving into, which is more plant maintenance. Definitely, there's a lot to learn, as we've just discussed. Doing your research is something that's really important before you plant a garden of any kind. It doesn't matter if you're trying to bear fruit or just have it be beautiful. It's really can be challenging. So if you don't do your homework, if you don't pay attention to those things, you're probably going to run into maintenance problems more than likely. And then it gets into a whole other host of problems and becomes challenging and difficult when it didn't need to be.
Yeah, because then you end up with like a plant that you didn't realize grows like 15, 25 feet tall and is now crowding out everything around it. And you're on a ladder trying to figure out how to actually take care of it. So yeah, like doing that pre-work is so important and choosing like you said, like there's so many different varieties being bred, things that are being dwarfed and like things that now you could fit into different areas and, different conditions, handle wet soil, dry soil. So it's like even, I guess in some ways, like even more challenging now to like kind of figure out because there's so many solutions in a good way also that it's kind of hard to actually sift through and like think like what is the right thing for this area when you have so much choice out there. And I think like you're mentioning, like one of the hardest things in the long run is to actually have an idea and plan for the maintenance of these plants.
This episode of The Beet is sponsored by our friends over at Shopify, who really have been with us from the beginning of selling products to you guys here at Epic Gardening. Our Birdie's Beds in the early days in 2019, that was a simple Shopify store that I set up that we've slowly grown and built over time into, I think, a pretty cool shopping experience. In fact, when we purchased Botanical Interest in 2022, the first thing we did on the tech side is move over to Shopify. It just made the process for you guys shopping so much easier. So whether you're a small business owner or you're growing pretty quickly, Shopify works with you at any scale, truly. And it's the most important app that we use to run our business here at Epic Gardening. So if you want to check it out, you can get a free trial at shopify.com/thebeet. That's shopify.com/the-BEET. And now let's get back to the beet.
I think a lot of people, especially if you're, let's say you're a gardener, you're a vegetable gardener, and you always have a garden, you feel like you understand that well, and you start to dabble and like plant other things around your yard, maybe your front of your house. I've definitely got into some of those where I'm like, okay, I did not plan for how like these agaves would pup and spread, or something like that. Like they could really take over a big section and become quite a bit of work if you're not ready and prepared for that. So I think that is like a thing a lot of people probably do struggle with. But everyone wants to add more plants to their yard, of course. So I could see that being like a interesting part. Like now that are you mostly focused on like the maintenance side of things now? Like, is that where you're kind of like headed towards, like in terms of you're not doing necessarily installs as much, but you're more about like, are you still doing install and maintenance? Or are you thinking about like the maintenance picture more so?
This kind of started a while back when I'm going to give you a little bit of a long answer.
Oh yeah.
And this started back as a child, being around nature and everything and seeing nature not contrived. Okay, this was true nature. I grew up on a 5-acre parcel in La Habra Heights, Los Angeles, California suburb. And we were on a 5-acre parcel. We had avocado trees that we harvested, but there was a lot of open natural land around me. And so I was able to go out in the straw or in the grass in the springtime, and in the summer it would turn to more dry straw like grass, and I would get ticks and all that fun stuff. It was great. My mom was like, stop going outside like that, and I just couldn't. Fond memories driving tractors with my dad on the property, doing just anything I could outside. And so I know how it feels to be in nature. And as I grew up, I spent more time in nature. I married. We spent all of our holidays wherever we could go. Everything was nature because he was a nature guy too. And it was just horticulture. It was like busman's holiday everywhere we went. It was just plants, botanic gardens. I mean, I've seen a lot of botanic gardens. And so being around plants in a natural setting, I really started to make the connection about how good it made me feel. And it was something that I realized I needed to, as I got older, I learned more things. I learned about the plants. I saw the problems that were happening day in and day out in the landscape. And I realized, I see how people, like you said, they love plants. They can't stop. They can't help themselves. But at the same time, I also saw what that was doing in terms of the overall landscape related to the maintenance part of it. And so the maintenance became something really important to me that it just kind of developed. I don't know. It's a strange thing to think that I'm into plant maintenance. I mean, I love to go to parties and things and ask people, what do you think I do for a living? If they're not plant people or whatever. And they never guess it. Never.
And they're always looking at their plants and being like, maybe I should do a little pruning over here, ripping off a leaf or two.
As time's gone on, I kind of realized that this is my mission. This is what I'm supposed to do. And the reason I feel that way is because I have no stage fright, zero. I'm able to get in front of people very easily and talk to them about what to do, how to do it, all these sorts of things. I think I have a really great way of being able to build relationships with people because I'm so open and kind of sometimes maybe too honest, but very honest, and telling them that, this is what you need to do, or give it up. You've planted too many plants here. You're going to have to make choices, these sorts of things. So I started to see, I was helping a lot of homeowners as I went through my years in the horticulture industry. And then I got to a point where I wasn't helping as many homeowners. My sales position had really kind of taken off. I was very busy doing that. So I was working more with the landscape trade. And I realized that the landscape trade had a different mentality. And the mentality was control, control, control. And it was control from a standpoint that was learned. It wasn't something that, they came to know, because honestly, they probably would have left it alone, the plants. But what's happened is over time, we've gotten into this different mentality because things are overplanted. Okay, yes, by landscape architects who design, designers who design. Not bashing you guys, I'm just saying we are asked to overplant at the request of our client, because the client wants to have this, blue ribbon effect.
That immediate result.
Yeah, they want to have this amazing result when they, open their building or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so commercial landscapes have kind of taken the wrong turn, because then what happens is all this planning, all this money that goes into it, things end up looking bad because it's overplanted, or you have labor that comes in and takes care of it. You have a crew that comes in and takes care of it, but they don't receive enough training. They don't receive enough direction as to how to do it, what to do. Learning the plants, going back to that part that I talked about, that was so important. How if you don't know how to take care of them, don't touch them, because you're probably going to mess them up in some way, And so we get into this vicious cycle of plants dying all the time, landscapes looking bad. And here I am helping to try and make it better by selling plants, helping people get these really unique, beautiful plants that come from the desert and native places, Southwest native places. And I started getting mad, like really mad, because the landscape looked terrible. And I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah, and the plants are dying and it feels wasteful.
I mean, you see it, right?
I'm sure that would drive you crazy.
Everything's pruned into a ball or a square or some wedge of cheese or some shapes I don't even know what they are. I'm like, what shape is that?
I was actually going to ask you. Yeah, like when you mentioned control, are you talking about control in the sense of like the way it's growing, like all of the above? And I'd also love to hear like an example or two of some of these plants. Like I'm trying to think of like maybe like agaves get planted all the time. And I know that people like to rip off all the leaves like at the bottom and stuff like that. And I don't know, is that because they just want it to like quote unquote look good? Is that good for the plant? I don't know if that's a good example, but
Well, it is an example for sure. I do see that. Yes. I think what's happened with the control part of it is that we've lost sight of what the landscape is there for.
Okay. I gotcha.
I feel like the mentality has changed, where we see the landscape almost as a nuisance, not as something beautiful that's there, that somebody put a lot of work and effort into to do the work to choose the plants. Maybe they overplanted them. Sometimes they don't. It gets planted, which can be, the install can go wrong too, in terms of interpreting the design, and then the pattern gets off, or the plants get planted too close to the edge. I see all kinds of things. There's lots of reasons there. It's collective, believe me. And then we get to the maintenance part of it, and the maintenance crew gets the job. And I'll be real, a lot of times it goes to the low bidder. Okay? Not saying the low bidder doesn't know how to do things, but they're going to do low bidder work. So you have to understand
maybe quicker, faster.
What that means. Yeah. That means more hedge trimming is what it really translates to. Okay? Faster. Weed whippers, hedge trimmers. How do you be efficient with a crew in a limited amount of time? Because that's your budget. Okay, reality. All right. They come in, they do their work. Again, they make it look like they did something.
I see. Right.
To prove their worthiness. And what happens is the landscape ends up looking unrealistic, not like it's supposed to, because they're honestly touching it too much. Whereas if they just left it alone, it would feel so much better and it would look so much better. But then they wouldn't be viewed as doing their work, because they wouldn't see anything being
the perceived
done.
value.
It's a perceived value, exactly. So what ends up happening now is that we have the public seeing this, okay, seeing these commercial sites, all of these parkways, medians.
Kind of getting used to it.
Exactly. They think that's the new normal. So we've gotten into this really wacky mindset about, and it's all started because of these like value. What is your perceived value in terms of
Oh man, that's interesting.
landscapes just look terrible. You drive through landscapes now and you look and you see, okay, I can tell that maybe it was a grass or that was this is a, maybe it's that, but all you see is green shrubs. You don't see anything being allowed to do what it really is meant to do, which is bloom, flower.
It's like not allowed to evolve,
Yeah, it's not
right?
allowed to.
It's just like they want it to look the same, static,
Exactly.
almost like sterile, like a fake plant, but it's actually alive for some reason.
Somehow, exactly. So we get into this really this mindset that needs to change about the landscape and how we view it, and how we need to get back to the part about what the landscape does. So let's talk about what the landscape does for us, okay? And this is general landscapes. You're driving down the road, you're going to get, food, you're going to get whatever. You're seeing the landscape as you whiz by, okay? Both sides of you. If not, at least on the right side as you're driving. And you're seeing everything cut back. You're not seeing any flowers, you're not seeing any birds, you're not seeing any activity, you don't see any community, you don't see any people. It's like you said, a very sterile environment. It's not inviting. Yet, why was that landscape developed and put there in the first place? If that's how we're going to view it. It should just all be cement and rock, right? It shouldn't be anything.
Yeah, it's
we
almost
have
like
to
a
take care
static
of.
painting.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really weird now that you mention it. I'm picturing like all these underpasses on freeways and like perfectly spaced plants with like monochrome gravel spread out. It's like all an exact grid. Everything's like pruned and looks like it's just been put there. And then like the next exit I go, all of a sudden there's like all these like fir trees planted like 3 feet apart from each other down by the border of San Diego. I'm like, what is this doing here? Like, this doesn't even make sense. All of a sudden, I just drove in by a coniferous forest and half of it's dying because it shouldn't be there. So it's very weird. Yeah, it's very weird, and it must drive you crazy in particular when you now like think and see that all the time. Like, I think I will now start even thinking about that more as I drive by stuff. Yeah, I'm infected now with that. But yeah, no, I get that.
There's a saying that I love that I didn't coin it, but it just fits. It's kind of funny. It's WPWP, my initials, which is wrong plant, wrong place.
Yes, that's a
But
classic.
there's also just how we care for it. I'm talking about how we care for it in terms of, what's the rotation that we come back and look at it? What's the, how much work does it really need to have in a year? Does it need to be pruned every month when you come to do your rotation? Or should it be skipped? And maybe it's only pruned twice a year or once a year. Again, it's all based on how the plant grows. And what do we want to see the plant do? Well, if the plant was planted there, the landscape architect planted it there because they liked the beautiful flowers, the overall size, okay? If that plant's never allowed to do that, you don't get the pollinators, no butterflies, no hummingbirds. I don't know who you are. You can be the hardest, mean-spirited person in the world, but if you see a hummingbird or a butterfly, I'm sorry, that gets to you. You're going to notice it in an emotional way because you're going to recognize nature, and we're all part of nature, and we all really need that. That's why nature makes us feel so good, is when we go out into nature, in a way we kind of feel at home. You know what I mean? We feel that connection, right? I mean, how do you feel in your garden? I know it seems like a stupid question, but
I mean, fantastic. Even right now, I'm looking out at it. And I actually just saw a hummingbird and a couple butterflies fly by. And I was like, oh, that's cool.
See? I mean,
it always feels good.
it
Like
does.
when people go see a waterfall, like you feel it. Like
Mhm.
you're in nature in a forest, like you could feel it. Like it just feels good.
Why do you think we travel the way we do to go see nature, right? Like, look at your Instagram feed. I'm sorry, it's mostly nature. There's a lot of nature stuff in there. There's just, nature is something that we all seek to be in
And we need it.
and feel, and we do need it 100%. So why should we be denied that fact
Yeah.
if we can have it every day as we drive down the road. It's been designed there and put there for us. Cities, HOAs, all of these people spend tremendous amounts of money every year. Look at their landscape budgets. It's insane. To do what? To turn
Mostly to
grasses?
fight.
Yeah, to control it? That's the wrong attitude. Work with Mother Nature. Learn the cycles of the plants. Even if you pick 5 plants for your city, learn those 5 plants. Learn what they need. Develop a plan. Know what that plan is so that you get the most bang for your buck out of those plants. Do you know what happens in a city when they see the plants blooming and they see them being taken care of beautifully and everything? You get community. You get people, you get happy residents. You get people that have a more positive outlook in life. They're hopeful. They're emotionally more stable. There's a lot of, how many people go in nature and talk? I don't know, I do. Maybe I'm talking in my head, but sometimes I'm talking out loud too, because I'm trying to understand something. I'm trying to work it out. And nature helps. It doesn't matter. During COVID, I remember how much nature helped me during COVID.
Hmm.
And a lot of people.
I mean, that's when I built my garden.
Yeah. And look at how many people started gardening. Not only because of the food, not only because of that, but I talked to so many people that found gardening during COVID and just said, wow, what an impact this has made on my life. You know, being able to
Yeah, kind of
see.
open them up to that world.
Yeah, just like crack that hard shell a little bit. So now my mission with Kinship League, I was trying for years to try and figure out how can I impact maintenance in a way that's not boring or seems like a lot of work, and I really want to start a movement, if you will, to have people at least have an awareness about it and to speak up about it. Even if they can't do any more than that, that's enough, because that will start to change minds and that will start to change attitudes. So what Kinship League does is myself, I go out to places, HOAs, cities, different entities that are looking for me to help their landscape companies or the crews that take care of the landscape. I do an evaluation, we develop a plan, and I develop targeted training for the individuals that are going to actually be doing the work, not their managers, not the owners. A lot of people have tried that. Do you know what happens? It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go to the guys who
It does
need
not
it.
trickle down.
No, and mainly because there's 2 reasons. One, most of the workers don't want to hear from the boss. Sorry, they just don't. 2, the boss doesn't take the time to show them what they really need to do. And 9 times out of 10, the boss doesn't know either. Sorry.
And they might rush it and just be like, look, here's what I learned. Let me show you really quick. Okay, now go do that.
Exactly. I mean, it'd be better than what they do now. They just give them the tools and say, go, make it beautiful, and whatever the interpretation is that of.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about, kind of approaching it that way. And also going with like these larger groups like HOAs or cities and central planning kind of things like that, because like that is a large portion of our landscape around cityscapes and everything like that. Like it is really controlled and comes down to whoever is doing these mass plantings. It's been interesting, at least lately, to see that there's been more and more interest in the native plant side of things.
For sure.
Like even here in San Diego, we recently had a huge like resort hotel go in, the Gaylord. They opened the new one here, and as part of the deal, they had to like develop this whole like huge section of park with all native plants. And it's actually like it looks really well done. It looks like they spaced things out nicely. I don't know about the maintenance side yet. It's only been there for a little bit, but it's just nice to see that as an example for people to have like a different option and to kind of see that there's different levels of beauty, and it doesn't need to just be like constantly blooming flowers 24/7, things like that.
Where is this again? Because it's funny you mentioned San Diego, because I work with the Port of San Diego and I've designed and redesigned and do maintenance trainings for them on several areas.
It's right on the northern edge of Chula Vista on the harbor. They just developed a whole new park that's like, I think, a couple hundred acres. And that's literally right on the bay, or yeah, on the bay, like right inside there within all the port area. and they supplied like local plants. They were grown locally, native plants. But it's something that I haven't seen like that until that was like the biggest example of it that I've seen in the city, where like a whole wide area was redeveloped with that in mind. And it looks really neat. Like it actually is beautiful. And it's just one of those things where I'm now going to be going back there and thinking about the maintenance and like how it's cared for throughout time. Because it is an interesting thing, like as we mentioned earlier, when a landscaper is hired to install something, a lot of times they're like, we need this to look really good for opening day. And the only way that that could happen when you're the last person in line who's even allowed to do anything, because they have to do all the building and everything first. And then they're like, okay, it's opening in 3 months. Can you install this whole garden and make it look perfect? It's like, yeah, they're probably going to overcrowd it and jam it full of stuff just to make it look like it's alive and not take the time to do it right. I am curious if you've seen like a system, which it does sound really wasteful, but maybe a system where they do plant very densely and then over the year or two they start to like thin it out and allow things to grow into place. Is that something that makes sense at all, or is that just kind of a waste?
Well, so it does happen that way, and there is that plan,
Okay.
at least in their mind, that that would be something that happens, but in reality, it doesn't really work. And
Right.
the reason it doesn't work is because if it was designed that way, it wasn't given to the person who's going to take care of it down the road as to this is how you do it. So they're kind of left to figure it out. Most of these landscape architects have a 1 year guarantee from the installer,
Oh,
and that's it.
okay.
Now, that contract is only for the first year. So then after that, it can change to somebody else, i.e., lower bidder, lowest bidder, and here we go. So maybe the first year it looks great, but then, and there's not a lot of room for like goof up because it's growing, right? You don't really have to do a lot to it. But you get into like year 3, when I say a landscape really comes into its own, you can really see what it's going to do. That's when we start to go wrong because now the landscape is getting a little tight, it's getting a little this. And then you have the guys where they've already started to, because the shrubs are growing too closely together, now they've become a blob shrub because they're all one shrub, right? And the center shrubs are lost all light except for the top because now they're surrounded by it. And so now you have just a big dead patch in
It's
the
hollow
center.
inside. Yeah.
Exactly. So now, how do you edit that? How do you edit that? So that's where it goes wrong. It just doesn't. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the type of plant. Grasses sometimes work that way. But then if you didn't develop that pattern ahead of time and inform the people who are going to be taking care of it, how would they know?
And so with the Kinship League, are you going into a lot of situations like this? Are you also kind of helping people get started, or is it more of like you're coming in to somewhere that has an issue with their sort of landscape and you're kind of helping them educate and learn how to actually care for it?
So it's mostly the education and care for aspect. There definitely is typically some editing that needs to be done, whether it's the wrong plant in the wrong place, whether it's a plant that's too thirsty for the rest of the landscape that is really lower water. Oftentimes you have one thirsty plant and all the rest of the landscape gets watered to keep that one thirsty plant alive. And it's like, wait a second, let's think about this. Let's replace the thirsty plant with a non-thirsty plant and we can cut our water bill in half or whatever. I mean, it's insane. And then the other thing is that the plants will actually thrive because they're not being overwatered. So there's an efficiency part of it that becomes really important. And that's another aspect of what the Kinship League does is it doesn't only look at, is it the right plant? How do I care for it? But it's like, how do I get on a rotation where I can make this landscape easy and I don't have to mess with it because it can take care of itself, so to speak. I'm here as a steward to help it along. I'm not here to actually tell it what to do because the DNA that it has tells it what to do. I don't have to do that. And if the landscape architect did their work properly, they picked the right plants from the get-go. Now, I'm going to say that that's not always the case. Unfortunately, oftentimes landscape architects don't have enough plant knowledge. I love you guys. I'm here for you. You know it. I want to help you learn. So please follow along. We are going to be teaching lots of plant material information through my Instagram page, Kinship League, as well as in any information that I put out there. It's all just information for you guys to learn about the plants. But going back, once they plant the plants, it just is something where after that, we just really need the landscape companies to follow up and make sure that this landscape's going to be taken care of properly. But understand that if you take care of it, maybe at higher concentration levels a couple times a year and lower levels the rest of the year, because it's more targeted. And through that efficiency, you're not lowering your price, okay, because you're still doing the work. You're still taking care of everything, and you're taking care of it in a different manner. It's a mindset, not only from the customer standpoint, the client's standpoint, but from the people who are doing the work. And then what will happen is you'll actually have more time, interestingly enough, as a landscape maintenance person, to go and find more jobs, to beautify the landscape more. And
Because if your work looks good, people will be happy.
yeah,
Like,
they're not going to be
you know,
bothering you.
they're not timing you necessarily. Like, I'm sure there are some people who are like, oh, maybe I paid for this amount of time and blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, people just want it to look good.
And if it's
And so
looking
that's really what
good,
they're looking at.
it's the perceived value again. And
Yeah.
because you have a skill set and an understanding of how to take care of this landscape, you become more valuable,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Because your landscape looks better, the residents are happier. All of these things come together. The plants are happier. Everything's in sync again. When it's out of sync, that's when it's expensive, because you're killing plants. The landscapers say, oh, it was a bad plant, or it didn't get enough water, or whatever the reason is. But when really the plant just didn't want that much attention.
Well, that's a classic one in the garden too.
Right?
Is,
We love too
just
much.
yesterday, just yesterday, somebody was like, man, I was like trying to get my bougainvillea to flower. I kept doing all these things, and I was like, forget it. And then I just ignored it for like a year, and then it just started blooming like crazy. I'm like, yeah, like a lot of times, like there isn't actually much they need to do. Like you just have to make sure it's at least alive and has some amount of water and light, like the basics. And a lot of times we like to get in there and maybe tinker a little bit too much and try to like hack the plant and force it to do certain things. But a happy plant will look fantastic if you just let it do its thing.
I think we need to get a different mindset going, especially as we move into times when we're busier and busier as, a race, culture. Society, we need to basically get into relaxing more, enjoying nature more, and stop making it so hard, because there are certain things that we can do to the landscape at certain times that is necessary. And then the rest of the time, we just need to leave it alone and let the DNA that it's programmed with to do its thing. If you've done your homework in picking the right plant to put in the right place, and there's lots of ways to do that, but if that's what you've done, it will work. You have to believe in the process and you have to let it happen. It might take a year for it to kick in. For example, natives.
Right. It's that patience.
Let's talk about natives
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, let's please. I love native plants.
So you used a term, what'd you call it? Nativars?
Yeah, that's what I've heard is like the cultivars of native. Like for instance, like paprika yarrow. It's like like a reddish yarrow, whereas like the quote unquote real yarrow is like
Is
the yellow color.
or
And some
white
people
or
are
that.
like, or white, yeah. And some people are like, oh, that doesn't count as a native plant anymore because the color is different. It's like a whole thing.
There's a
I don't
purist
necessarily know if I have a
belief
side.
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'll say I don't have a side, but I do have paprika yarrow in my yard. So
It's a great plant. I use it in my native landscapes too, and I mix
yeah.
it with millefolium, the straight white one, so it adds a
Oh
little
yeah.
pop of color, something a
Hmm.
little different. And when it comes to the natives, so that this is a different mindset kind of than what we're talking about, really. And I encountered this actually just last week when I was training a crew on site, a native garden that I designed 3 years ago. And the first year we had too much rain, and during the planting time, while it was getting established, a lot of things drowned.
Oh, okay.
So we had to replant the second year. Now we're in our third year, and the landscape is amazing. It's thriving. It looks great and everything. But I'm getting into a little bit more maintenance with the guys because things are starting to touch a little bit. And that was my intention of this, is because I didn't want it to be contrived looking. It needed to be more, like nature, haphazard, a little more natural, a little bit over here and some over there and this kind of thing. But then
Yeah, they'll
communities,
eventually meet
things,
and touch.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a different mindset for the guys trying to maintain it, because we had a training and I had a crew of 5 guys there with me, and we were out there preparing to do a fall maintenance on these native plants as they get ready to start to grow again through the winter, wake up from their summer rest. And so they were starting to prune things back, in the traditional kind of ball, way and everything. And I said, wait a minute, this isn't, slow down. You have to understand what we're looking for here. And the plant, so you have to have the goal in mind when you look at a landscape. You have to understand what it is you want the aesthetic to be when you're finished. Do you want it to look like you've been through there with a chainsaw, or do you want it to look like natural and just ready to continue to grow? Most people say natural.
Yeah.
So, and what's interesting is it actually requires less work. That's what's the funny part than the chainsaw
Yeah, I believe that.
approach. Yeah. So I showed them how to lift the plants and take the dead material out and maybe tip them back just a little bit so that the inner buds would flourish and fill the plant out when it started to grow. So I showed them these simple techniques on the different plants. And by the end of the training, sure, at the beginning of the training, I had a few guys that were like, what's she going to teach us? There's always some of that. And by the end, they were shaking my hand and saying, thank you. Because I was making their jobs easier. I was helping them to understand that it really just comes down to understanding the plant and knowing what to do when, and the rest of the time you just leave it alone and enjoy it. So they hadn't had that conversation before, especially about native plants. The rest of the landscape is really the same, but with native plants, you have a different aesthetic because it's a little more natural. It's a little more, kind of wild, not necessarily as controlled. So they were struggling with that a little bit. So we had to have a little conversation about that too.
Yeah, it's interesting because the native garden, there's a lot of the plants, especially in like the Southwest, they'll go drought deciduous, like you were saying, like they basically knock out in the summer, and they look like, you'll go through areas in the spring, like hiking around, you're like, wow, it's so green and nice. Same area you go through like right now, and it's like, wow, everything's like brown and dead. And then all of a sudden you go back another 4 months later and it's all actually alive. And a lot of people look at that and they're like, oh, it's all dead. You should just probably remove it all. And it is like a tricky thing. Like even right now, I had my white sage that that gets massive, shoots out all these tall blooms and branches. And we like to leave it so that like the goldfinches come through, eat all the seeds or the bush tits. And now it's starting to regrow. And I'm like, I should probably go through and start pruning back some of the dead stuff. But even if I were to do that, it'd be like a long branch and then a regrowth near the base. It would still look pretty natural because it doesn't really grow like in a perfect way anyway. And like you were describing, I'm sure if you asked 2 people, take the same native garden and you trimmed everything into a ball, you're like, all right, it's done. Or you did the other one and you just kind of selectively pruned and allowed it to be a little bit more natural. Everybody would like that one more for sure. And especially once you give it another couple months and you see it actually regrow again, it's just going to feel different. It's not going to look cookie cutter, but it's going to look better and just feel better. And I think that is like a tricky thing for people to understand because it is kind of a different game and there are a lot of different plants. So I could see that being like kind of intimidating for some, for sure.
But if you have a garden where you have, let's say, 10 varieties in there, 10 different plants, you only have to learn those 10 plants.
That's true. Yeah.
It doesn't need to be as taxing, I think, as some people make it. And what you'll gain from that knowledge of understanding will be huge in terms of your mental outlook, the way you approach it, the excitement you have to actually do the work, because you will have seen the gifts of what you did prior and how it's almost like an excitement factor. You see it, if you do this work, what the reward is going to be in the spring or during the winter or whatever. And so and then it's glorious for months, 6 months,
Yes.
and you're like,
Yeah.
wow. Whereas if you did nothing or you did it a different way, it may come out okay, but it's not going to thrive the same as if you didn't done it a different way, slightly different. And it's just a training thing. It's just an understanding.
That is a good point though. Like if I think about even my native garden, there probably are like 10 different like really groups or species like a manzanita, ceanothus, a yarrow, some sages. It's not that many. So when you're thinking about this, like, obviously the first thing that I would think is you just Google it, but is there like how would you recommend people go about like researching and learning these plants? Like, is there something specific that we should be looking for, like how to prune ceanothus, that could come up with a bunch of different results? Like how do we as like I guess budding landscape gardeners or anything like that understand how to like steward and care for our plants and like what's a good resource for us?
Well, that's challenging because there's many resources out there. And you're right in terms of there can be misinformation out there. So what I would do is I would start to look at websites for sources that are reputable. And the other thing would be to start to collectively gather information and deduce from your readings the one that has the commonality amongst them and use that approach, because that's probably the right way. If many people have said do the same thing, it's through trial and error and through practice, and they've seen the results, so you can feel pretty confident with that. There's a lot of good books out there, and you can get those through local water agencies as well, have great information typically, especially for native plants and low water use plants. But if you're going for the general type of plant out there, then I would say, tags that you get with the plant. Sometimes those are regionalized, unfortunately. So you can get a plant tag on a plant, for example, and it's sold to you, but the tag was actually made for the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, I see.
That happens.
So
Okay.
that could be tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good to do a little further research, make sure that this is the way they react in the southern part or wherever you are, so that you can understand, is this really the way this plant's going to be happening here? The other thing is, if you're at the nursery purchasing, ask a nursery professional there to confirm that this plant does well in your area. I mean, they might say, well, we're selling it here, and say, yeah, but there's a lot of plants that are considered annuals that I'm just going to plant and throw away. So feel free to ask those questions, or have a list of those plants in your garden. Go into the garden center, grab the attention of somebody there that has plant knowledge, and talk to them about these plants. When would you cut these back? And confer some of the information that you found online, I would say. It's going to take a little time, but once you have it down, write it down, save it, and you have it forever. And now you have your plan. So it's going to take a little work, just like anything, but it will be worth it in the end, for sure.
Yeah, actually, as you were mentioning that, I was thinking like in California, we are lucky we have Calscape, which is a fantastic resource of information. It's really like detailed about even watering needs, light, all that kind of stuff. Another thing we've done in the past is we looked at our native plant society, and like every spring they will often do like native plant tours, and that's a good way to kind of see different landscapes and gardens, and you're like, whoa, like I never thought about doing it this way, or wow, it's incredible that you could interplant these things together and they look so natural and beautiful. And then the other one was just literally going to my local native plant nursery. And like you said, talking to those people, because oftentimes the people who are at the sale point of plants are also working in the background with the propagation or collection. And so I chatted with one of them, and he was like, oh yeah, this is really great in the shade. You're okay planting it right now. It's like a little bit late, but you should be fine. And a lot of great information that simply by asking. So yeah, that's totally a great way to approach it. And like you said, going back through and doing a little bit of secondary researching is probably ideal.
Definitely. And Calscape and Native Plant Society, a lot of these places, those would be very reputable websites to look at. Calscape especially, that one's been around a long time and it has tremendous information. I use it myself. But also attend as many events as you can. Like you said, I do a lot of events, outreach events, community events where I teach people how to prune certain plants. Maybe you learn 3 plants that day, but what you learn is I teach you about how does that plant grow and how can you apply the same practice to other plants in your garden that grow the same way. So now you've just learned more plants because you've learned which ones grow a certain way and how to deal with them. So you can really increase your knowledge, and I think it has a better tendency to stick if you go and you see it in action like that, and you can talk with other people, develop relationships with them where you can talk. A lot of times I go and do events and I have people that have come back and seen me 4, 5, 6 times and talk to me, and now I know them, I know their garden, they ask questions. You'd be surprised if you haven't gotten out there and really talked to people about your garden and talked to about plants. People love talking plants.
Oh yeah. I mean, sometimes you might get a little more than you ask for
Exactly,
even.
yeah. I have to be careful sometimes telling people what I do because otherwise I'll get in a very
Yeah.
long conversation with them.
Yeah. It's like, how deep do we want to go?
Yeah. Speaking of which, I want to talk just for a moment about the impact of what this mindset change does for the crew, the workers at the level that are doing the actual work.
Yeah.
A really interesting, psychological thing here happens when you get up each day and you go to work and you think about what you're going to do. You're either excited, you're not excited, you're kind of so-so. If it's a job that you're okay with, you've accepted it, this is what you do, you go. There can be a mindset change for these crew members. I find that that's oftentimes the case. They're not excited about going to work. They're going through the motions. They're doing what they're doing. And it's strictly because they've been given a task and they're not really understanding why they're doing it or what it's doing for the overall picture. So if a person has that mentality and you empower them with knowledge and how to do their job, when I go and I do these crew trainings with the folks there, they learn one-on-one how important their job is and they learn how to do it. So now they're empowered and they don't require anything more than that, than just knowing that themselves and the crew know how to do this the right way. And so they go in and they apply those practices day in, day out. They've told me we get excited about coming to work again because we see the plants growing, we see what they do, we see the benefits, we see the butterflies and the hummingbirds. They love them too. The tuberosas, they see all that, they love it. They love seeing all that kind of stuff. So it's one of the things where you really don't understand until you've seen it in action how empowering this is for the crews and how you have better employee retention. You have people that don't have as many issues with human resources. They become a team player. And what's really interesting is that if you have somebody who doesn't want to play along, let's say you have one person that has a bad attitude or whatever, the rest of the crew can help to change their mind because they are doing it themselves and they want to have pride in what they're doing. And so they can talk to the person and say, hey, we need you on board, man. We're all part of this team now doing the right thing. And look how great it looks. And the residents are happy. They walk by and they go, you're doing a great job. Thank you so much. I mean, I see this stuff. You don't normally see that. And it's amazing.
No.
It just makes me
and even just learning
so
a new
good.
skill.
Yeah, learning something, feeling that your employer spent the time to invest in you. They believe in you.
Everybody likes to grow, just like plants. Growth is like a big thing. And picking up a skill will make you feel like, like you literally know something more now. You have more to offer. That's something you could bring to the table in the future and build upon. And so, I would imagine that it only feels good to kind of get more of those skills and like be able to put them into practice and see those results is really cool. Like even just, like you said, like just to see more, like instead of blooming or pruning everything before it even blooms, now you get the blooms, you could see the life come in. And that's like an immediate response that you could feel and see and prove to yourself. Like you don't even really need much more than that. So that's just like such a cool, like holistic way to think about and approach it. because then the people will like these crews that are learning will carry that torch, I'm sure, because it's better for them, it's better for the plants, it's better for the customer. So everyone probably feels better in the long run in this kind of like learning experience instead of just like you said, weed whackers and chainsaws and just quick mop up jobs. Yeah, like that's really neat. And again, like every time you do this, like that impact I'm sure is spreading because now that crew can teach other new people who join that crew and so on and so forth. It's kind of like a snowball.
Yeah,
So
the knowledge carries
it's
on
great.
excitingly, as opposed to another guy joins the ho hum crew of this is what we do. So it's like, hey
Yeah.
man, let me show you how to do this right. Let me show you how these plants and why do we do it this way and everything. So people still get to use their hedge trimmers. You still get to use your weed whackers. You still get, but at the right time and in the right way.
Yes.
There's a way to use the hedge trimmer, and there's a good way and a bad way to use the hedge trimmer. So teaching them how to use different tools at different times, the importance of hand pruning, over hedge trimming on certain plants, and how you can prune a plant twice by hand per year, or you can prune it 5 times a year by a hedge trimmer. And you get a very different outcome. Very different. You never see the flowers. The plant struggles in terms of its structure. It's not aesthetically pleasing. There's so many things. There is no negative to this approach. I keep trying to find one. Because it's not even the money spent to train the individuals. Because your investment, if you have employee retention, you're not spending money for nothing. You're spending money to hold that employee there, to make them feel valuable.
Right. And in some ways, I could definitely see, there might be some days that are more labor just to kind of get things right. But then other times there's probably way, way less labor because you realize that actually, no, I don't have to do anything right now. Instead of like finding something to like force yourself to do every single time just because that's the way it has been.
Or doing different things, learning that there are different things to do. Checking irrigation. Do you know how many times irrigation is checked? Let me rephrase that. How many times irrigation is not checked? That's what I really should be saying. Because I'd be surprised if it's checked once a year in many cases. Seriously, the irrigation goes on when nobody's there, so nobody checks it.
Even like in my own garden, I've actually, by not checking, because I often have it running early in the morning, I didn't realize at one point that like my filters were clogged. And I was like, wow, these plants don't look as good right now. And I realized they just simply weren't getting as much water. And if I didn't actually check that, like who knows how long I would have been scratching my head before I figured it out. So yeah, like little things like that, they definitely add up. Yeah. Well, very cool. It's been really fun chatting with you and this Kinship League and this mission of actually caring about the landscape and treating it like it's part of nature and not just like some still life painting that has to be like trapped in eternity. And I think probably, I know myself, but probably other people listening are now going to be driving down the road and kind of looking at things and be like, that just really doesn't make sense. And like you'll see it later on, it'll probably be dead and like replanted and replaced.
Yep.
And
You'll watch it
yeah,
slowly
it's
die.
a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, you'll watch it die and you'll say, I know why now. I know why now. Or you'll see one thriving and one dying, and you can quickly see why. Because the plant has been pruned to the point it has no leaves in order to regenerate itself.
Can't photosynthesize, yeah.
Just the simple information that we need to get passed on to the right individuals, and plus the success of these companies that is just waiting to be, it's there to be grown. People just don't know.
Yeah, and it makes sense that your journey to this point, like from the beginning of growing plants, installing them, and then seeing everything that happens in this world, leading you up to like your focus now with Kinship League and the maintenance, it just makes a lot of sense. And for people who are curious, it is kinshipleague.com, right?
Correct, yeah. And our tagline is for the love of plants. And it's meant in
Nice.
2 ways, okay? For the love of plants, please. Please help us. Help us with this mission that we have. So, and the other way is I just truly love plants. For the love of my plants, I want to help them and I want to see them thrive. So it's 2 ways for sure.
Yeah, you don't want to see them randomly dying.
No.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thanks for coming on today. And I'm sure everyone at home picked up a couple things, and it was really fun chatting with you.
Thank you so much.
Good luck
Really
getting
appreciate
everyone
it.
else to love plants and getting the training out there.
Awesome. Spread the word, all right?